Okay. Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to Future You, How to Build a Career in Environmental Sustainability. My name is Elizabeth Schiltz, and I'm the Director of Communications at the Canada Foundation for Innovation, or as we typically call it, the CFI. First, I would like to mention that the CFI respectfully recognizes and acknowledges the traditional relationship that the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis across Canada have with the land all Canadians share. So before we get started, I just want to tell you a little bit about the CFI and why we are doing this webinar series. The CFI is a funding organization that invests in research labs, equipment, and facilities on campuses across the country. This includes everything from DNA sequencers, lasers, and electron microscopes to larger scale infrastructure like ocean tracking networks, radar systems, and research vessels. And we funded almost 13,000 projects over 27 years. So you can imagine that many of the research projects you can think of in Canada probably somehow use the infrastructure we have funded. You may even know some on your own campuses. The investments we make help attract top researchers to Canada and equip them to be global leaders in their fields. Access to cutting-edge research labs and tools allows them to respond to emerging challenges like the pandemic and food security, climate change, and environmental sustainability, which is the area we're going to focus on today. So why are we doing these webinars? Well, the labs we support also serve as a training ground for students. They are the spaces where undergrads and grad students conduct research, meet their mentors, and gain skills they can use to build their careers. In fact, each of the panelists we have with us today and our moderator have spent time working in CFI-funded labs. And as you'll find out, they have all gone on to work in rewarding careers. As an organization, we recognize the value of this kind of training, and hope to inspire students to see the same. So I think we're ready to get started. But before we do, I just want to mention one little bit of housekeeping before I introduce our moderator. We're leaving as much time as possible for panelists to answer your questions. So if you have a particular question you think of as you listen to the discussion, please write it in the Q&A section you see at the bottom of your screen. We will endeavor to get to as many of these as possible during the time we have. So now I would like to pass it over to our moderator, Catherine Girard. Catherine is an assistant professor of microbiology at l'Université du Québec à Chicoutimi. Her research focuses on the microbial ecology of ice in the Arctic and how climate change will alter landscapes and ecosystem function. So she's very well positioned to lead this discussion today with our four really interesting panelists who are all working in environmental fields. Thank you again for joining us today, and over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thanks to everyone who's joining us in the audience for this webinar. I am very pleased to act as the moderator for today's discussion with our panelists. And as Elizabeth mentioned, I'm a microbial ecologist. I'm interested in how microbes are responding to the warming Arctic. And climate change and sustainability have always been very deeply connected in the work that I do, and microbes are one of the key actors of this interplay. So throughout my training in STEAM, I was always fascinated by biodiversity, by conservation, and how ecology and microbiology research can lead to sustainable solutions to local and global issues. So the subject is certainly very near and dear to my heart, and I'm very pleased to be with you today to facilitate this panel on careers in environmental sustainability. And I'm very happy to get to spend the next hour with you and with our wonderful panelists who have careers in this sector from all across Canada. So now I will briefly introduce our four panelists who you see on the screen. So first, Emmanuel Balogun, who is a fuel cell scientist at Simon Fraser University in Burnaby, British Columbia. Welcome, Emmanuel. We're also welcoming Christine Gabardo, who's a clean tech innovator and the co-founder and chief technology officer of CERT Systems in Toronto. Welcome, Christine. We're also welcoming Varun Gupta, who is a water and mine closure specialist at Environmental Resources Management, also in Toronto. Hello, Varun. And we're also welcoming to the panel Kiyomi Holman, who works at Ocean Networks Canada in Victoria as a community support specialist. So hello, Kiyomi, and thank you, all four of you, for joining us here today. So I would now like to pass the mic over to our panelists and give each of them the opportunity to introduce themselves and to share a bit about their journeys in their respective fields. So what paths led them to their current work in environmental sustainability? What experiences, which mentors supported them along this journey? And what does a day in the life of our panelists look like in their current careers? So let's start with Emmanuel, who again is a fuel cell scientist at Simon Fraser University. Emmanuel, could you share a bit with us about your journey and tell us what led you to your current work?
Hi, everyone. So as you all know, my name is Emmanuel. I'm originally from Nigeria, and I lived in Nigeria up until I think 9, 10 years ago. That's where I did my bachelor's degree. I did my high school and everything back in Nigeria. And I would say that growing up in Nigeria was very interesting because I never knew there was a different reality compared to what I had seen back then. But coming to Canada made me put a lot of things into perspective. First and foremost, why did I choose a career in environmental science and maybe engineering, and why did I go into clean tech? I would say, I don't know about Canadians and other nationalities represented in this webinar, but African parents and mothers, they always want their kids to be doctors. I also wanted to be a doctor because I just like the title. I write a lot of essays, and I'll be like, oh, wow, I would like to be referred as Dr. Balogun, not Mr. Balogun. But then I realized I didn't like blood. I can faint at the sight of blood, so I needed to have a different career path. Thankfully, I took a class in my biology class. I think that's SS1, which is equivalent to the grade 10 year. And we worked on chlorofluorocarbons and the effect on the environment. And that changed my perspective. And that informed my career choice to date, because I realized that we were actually developing ourselves to extinction because CO2 in the environment is bad, greenhouse gases. And I also noticed that Nigeria had the fourth highest death rate from bad, what's the word now? From air quality at the worst. Yeah, so I just felt like I could save lives, maybe not as a doctor, maybe as an environmentalist. So I decided to take a career in STEM, and yeah, that had been what had propelled the other choices I've made thus far. What does a day in my life look like? So one of the things also that really helped me coming up was I had a lot of mentors. One of key mentors I had in my life was one of my professor in college. He actually introduced me to research early because he saw my interest in those kind of things. And I started looking at dye-synthesized solar cells and other kind of things. Although they weren't adding to my grades, they were just some stuff you do on the side. And that's how my interest got piqued, because I started seeing the impact, the meaningful impact you could have through research. Although it wasn't well funded, but at least you could see that you're making little changes. And I saw how amazing it is. Like when you publish a paper, you are the only one in the world that have that insight. So it's kind of a pride thing also. So yeah, that's one thing that really guided me in this path, because that experience opened me up to the possibilities that exist in this STEM field, in the environmental field. And yeah, I began to become more curious, ask more questions, and yeah, that really helped. A day in my life, I go to the lab. I kind of live in the lab. So you do a lot of experiments, you make catalysts, make inks, my hands are very temperature friendly now because I work on 80 degrees. Most of the time, PM fuel cell is 80 degrees. So I can actually disassemble a cell that is 80 degrees hot. And yeah, it's fun though. It's really, really fun. You get to discover new insights, get frustrated with experiment failing, but then you get the excitement when you find something that is patentable. So it's been amazing thus far. And yeah, pretty much predictable, very much. A day in my life is pretty much predictable, everything I do, but I would not trade it for anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. And I think a lot of people in the audience probably and on our panel can relate to living in the lab. That's certainly something that is very familiar to many people here. And what a wonderful start to your journey. This, this feeling of being able to save lives in other ways than through medical practice, through environmental studies. I think that's really lovely. So thank you for sharing. I'd now like to pass the mic over to Christine to share a bit about her journey with us. So Christine, how did you get involved in clean tech innovation, and how did you end up co-founding CERT Systems?
Thanks, Catherine, and thanks to CFI for inviting me to participate on this panel. As it was mentioned, I'm Christine Gavardo, co-founder and CTO of CERT Systems. CERT Systems is a carbon tech company. We're a startup company on a mission to transform the way the world's most important chemicals are made. So these chemicals like ethylene go into everyday products that we interact with, like textiles, building materials, and fuels. And traditionally, we've relied on fossil fuels as both the carbon source and the energy source to fire the processes to make these chemicals. So this has led to significant CO2 emissions each year being derived from the chemical production industry. So at CERT, we're developing an electrochemical technology that converts carbon dioxide and water using clean electricity into these same base chemicals. And at scale, our technology has the potential to reduce over a gigaton of emissions. So I grew up in Dundas, Ontario, which is part of Hamilton. And I've always been interested in math and science, inventing things and building things. And so after I finished high school, I decided to go into engineering, and I chose McMaster University to do my undergrad because they offered a program in electrical and biomedical engineering. And I was really interested in this field because it covered so many different aspects of engineering. It was very multidisciplinary, and I was like Emmanuel, my family wanted me to be a doctor, but I'm also afraid of blood. So I thought maybe I could develop medical devices instead. And so during my undergrad, I had the privilege of working in multiple research labs at the university. And then after my undergrad, I decided to continue in academia and in research. And I decided to do a master's in the School of Biomedical Engineering at McMaster. And so I was working on electrochemical biosensors for point of care applications. And I really enjoyed that research work. And so when it came time for me to actually graduate, I decided to switch into the PhD program so I could finally become a doctor, a different type. And so after I graduated from that program, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with my career. So I decided to stay in academia and do a postdoc. So I joined the University of Toronto in Professor Dave Sinton's group, and I switched fields into CO2 electroreduction. So I had the background in electrochemistry, but I was applying it for a different field. So the first 2 years of that experience were a typical postdoc experience. But then at the end of the 2 years, I had the opportunity to join as the technical lead for a school team that was participating in the Energy COSIA Carbon X Prize competition. And so this was a global competition aimed at developing and scaling technologies to convert carbon dioxide from industrial sources into usable products. And so I was tasked with trying to translate the technology that we had developed in the lab into a pilot plant that could be deployed at an industrial site. So over 2019 and 2020, our team worked on scaling our device, and we deployed it in Calgary, Alberta, at an industrial power plant, where we have demonstrated the largest carbon dioxide electrolyzer to date and the first to convert industrial emissions into ethylene. So with the success of that competition and the traction that we gained with the potential customers, we decided to spin out CERT Systems as a company from the university. So in 2021, with my co-founders, we spun out and we started building our company and growing our team. And so that's what I've been doing since then. So my role as CTO at CERT is a bit I guess, ambiguous. I do a lot of different things. I have to wear a lot of different hats. While I am mostly focused on the technology side, so developing a technology roadmap for getting our product to commercialization and de-risking our technology, I also have to manage our technical team. So we have a team of 12 engineers and scientists. I have a lot of administrative duties and HR duties, and I also help with fundraising and grant applications. So kind of a bit of everything at the moment.
Thank you so much, Christine, for sharing. And I think that this transition from postdoc, from academia into industry, into entrepreneurship is really, really fascinating. And I'm looking forward to hearing questions from our audience members for you. And I'm sure you must wear many, many different hats in your role in your company. Thank you so much, Christine. I'd like to pass the mic to Varun now. Varun, can you tell us a bit about your the journey that led you to your current career as a water and mine closing specialist?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me here, first of all. Yeah, so I moved to Canada from India in early 2000s. So I've been here for about 20 years. I did my high school onwards in Canada. Back in high school, I wasn't the smartest kid in the block. And, I was like, I just want to do the bare minimum schooling so I can go get out there and do a job. But, things didn't work out the way I planned, luckily. And I ended up going to University of Toronto and did biology and environmental sciences specialist and major there. And I found really good mentors at U of T who kind of guided me through the whole journey. And I really found what I was really passionate about was like, I really love biology. I really love environmental sciences, but I also knew I didn't want to be a medical doctor and anything like that. So I just found like a really good lab where I was just able to learn techniques, able to just like enjoy what I was, what I just really liked, without really focusing too much about future, what was gonna that take me there. So I stuck around, did my master's there as well. Um, so that was in biogeochemistry and wetland scientist. So that was my background, and like looked at carbon and methane cycling. It was all wonderful. Really loved what I was doing, but didn't get me a job. So I kind of like stepped back and thought about it. Or well, where can I get my environmental career out of here? So I focus more on using my base knowledge and make it more applied. So I decided to do a PhD where, I focused on, again, wetlands, but to use wetlands to treat mine drainage water. So, contaminated water coming out of mines. And I went and did a PhD in that from Laurentian University in Sudbury. So that was the first time I started working in a mining sector, and really enjoyed doing that. And then right after I finished my PhD, I moved to Saskatoon. I worked for for a startup company where we did semi-passive water treatment systems for mines. And then I moved to ERM, where now I work for mine closure team. And what we mainly do is we work with like all the big mines out there, like you can think of, and we go and develop their closure plan, which is essentially a master document that kind of guides how a mine will close eventually, following all the regulations and best management practices and all that stuff, right? So but I was able to utilize all of the knowledge and skill sets and to use it in my current role. But in my daily job, that's what I do a lot of time. But I also like field work, as you can tell, I'm in my field gear right now, and I'm working at a military base doing some archaeology. Why? Just because I wanted to be out in the field. There's only so much desk work I can do. So I wanted to be out. I, managed to be out here, do some other type of different work, right? So it keeps life interesting, and you always find new stuff to do.
Thank you, Varun, and thank you for joining us from the field. It seems like you knew very early on that you had this passion for biology and for the environment, and it's quite amazing to see how it's become something that's so applied for these mine closure plans. So thank you for sharing, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from you. So finally, I would like to invite Kiyomi to speak. Kiyomi works at Ocean Networks Canada. And Kiyomi, can you tell us a bit about how you became a community support specialist?
Absolutely. Thank you, Catherine. It's a made-up title for anyone wondering. We did make that one up. So I work at a group called Ocean Networks Canada. It's a not-for-profit based out of the University of Victoria, which we endeavor to support research in ocean sciences by collecting big data. So that's our big thing. We have a couple large cabled observatories that go off the west coast of Vancouver Island here. It's like one of them is about 800 kilometers of fiber optic cable. It's all collecting data under there 24/7 that we make available. It's open access, it's free to download, that kind of stuff. But we also just try to support others doing their own research projects and help them accomplish their ocean science data objectives, whatever they may be. But my journey here was definitely a bit of a squiggly line on a map. I grew up in Metro Vancouver in BC, and I spent a lot of time here outside, like goofing around in the mountains and canoeing and surfing and camping and doing all that. So I was very fortunate. I knew pretty early on that I just wanted to study something to do with the outside. I had a passion for geography early on, and that just seemed to cover everything I was interested in when I was outside. I was definitely that nerdy friend who'd be like, oh, look at the columnar basalts. So to accomplish this and terrorize my friends even more, I went to SFU, and I started actually with a Bachelor of Arts in geography, and then got pretty bored of that pretty quickly. So I switched over to a Bachelor's of Science and started focusing on hydrology and spatial information systems. So during my undergrad, I was in co-op, I did some field courses, and I just really was enjoying fieldwork. I was trying to get myself outside as much as possible. I'm glad that Varun mentioned this as well, because there is only so much time you can spend at a desk. So in all of these courses, it's impossible to complete any of them without discussions around the significance of environmental sustainability and climate change. And so I sort of naturally gained this interest in pursuing a career in that. And yeah, honestly, it's really fun. That's about it. It's super fun. Sometimes a little soul crushing, but overall very fun. So I started with this selfish idea of somebody paying me to play outside. And at some point I had to recognize that I wasn't the next Alex Honnold. And, you know, the planet needs a lot of help. So my passion shifted more towards sustainability. While in my undergrad, I had a really excellent professor in remote sensing. And I loved this subject in particular because I had already been enjoying GIS, geographical information systems, but there were so many other ways to work with spatial data sets and the results, which for me, I'm a very visual person. So these results were very visual and very cool to analyze. And it was something unique, at least at the time, and I'm not sure if this has changed, but it was unique to geography degrees, and it was important for my future career goals. So sometime in there, I did an internship with some fluvial geomorphologists, and I was working on the Columbia River in Astoria. And so I got to go on a boat for the first time doing some multi-beam echo sounding surveys, and that was pretty dope. And this just sort of kept on reinforcing that I loved remote sensing and I wanted to do a fair amount of field work. So my prof ended up getting a tenure track position in Ottawa. And so I followed him over there to do grad school with him. And as a supervisor and a mentor, his name is Anders, he made sure I had a lot of opportunities. We got some work with Natural Resources Canada, doing drone surveys to estimate snow depth. He made sure I was prepped to go diving in the Arctic for my fieldwork. And I was definitely not mistaken for a seal by a group of Inuit hunters. He made sure I attended conferences related to my work with them. He encouraged me to sign up for an exchange program with it's the University Center in Svalbard, which is an archipelago way up north, about 78 degrees north to be exact. And there I got to study chemical oceanography for a few months, and that was also very, very amazing. So learning about phytoplankton and its role in our lives and how I can breathe thanks to phytoplankton. Then I got to do some TA work, and I was in a field course for landscape ecology in Zanzibar, where we spent a ton of time snorkeling in coral reefs. And that was the first time I saw that my prof got really rattled, because I guess he had done his PhD there. And so the difference in the time that he had done his PhD to when we had gone back, there was a lot of wasting happening in the coral reefs. And so he was pretty shaken up by that, but it was just sort of bringing it, you know, climate change into reality even more for us, I guess. And then most of all, he was really cool when I got my first job offer while working on my master's with him. So I ended up packing up and moving back to BC to work at a mine as an environmental coordinator. And it was a lot. I wouldn't recommend doing full-time work alongside grad school. It's, pardon the pun, it's the pits. I got a lot of field experience in though, which was terrific. And the role itself was interesting, but it wasn't for me. And during my time there, I attended the Canadian Hydrographic Conference as a student. And I was in a presentation by Kate Moran, our CEO and president of Ocean Networks Canada, and I was hearing about all the cool work they were doing, and just that it was interesting. There was a lot of room to grow. There was so much stuff that they're doing as an organization. And given that my studies and experiences were now more focused on marine environments, and knowing I definitely didn't want to continue a career in marine environments, in natural resources, I started shifting towards how do I get a job there. So I left the mine, finished my master's, got a job actually with the Ministry of Agriculture, which is like another left turn, just to beef up my work experience and geomatic skills. And then I applied, did not get a job at ONC as a GIS specialist, but did get a job as a community support specialist on the community-based monitoring team. So in my role, we collaborate with coastal communities and partners to develop and implement their own oceanographic monitoring programs, however that might look. I don't really have a typical day in my work since my schedule is often tied to our partner schedules. So one week I might be working on reports until my eyes bleed, but another, I might be delivering training on how to use some instruments. I might be working on developing vessel traffic density maps for a group. A couple of weeks ago, I was on a boat in the middle of a humpback whale migration with a team of guardians from Hartley Bay in northern BC. It's a really varied and usually pretty interesting job. So I'm happy that I got here the way I did.
Thank you, Kiyomi, for sharing. And yeah, I'm expecting a lot of people in the audience also feel this need, this drive of being outside, basically, to pursue work in environmental studies or in sustainability. And I really enjoyed the squiggly line analogy that you're allowed to change your mind, right, during your training and to switch back and forth, course correct. So looking forward to hearing more about that during our panel.
Thanks.
So thank you to all four panelists for introducing yourselves. Now I would like to delve maybe a little bit deeper into how you got here, why your work in sustainability is important. So maybe to start us off, I could direct this first question to Varun, because you already mentioned this a bit during your introduction. When did you know you wanted to pursue a career in environmental studies? You mentioned very early on not necessarily being that keen on school. And what was sort of the light bulb moment for you?
Just even growing up, I just grew up watching the Discovery Channel. Like, I was just always intrigued by environment, biology, right? So like, that was always something, really intrigued me. And I was good at it. Like, I innately understood concepts. I just and which is great. But I would say, like, when I really considered environmental sciences as a career, that would be like later part of my undergrad, where I was working in a lab, doing my honor thesis and all of that. And, it really showed me different aspect of it. But I also knew very early on that I didn't want to be an academic. So my route was like consulting. If I keep doing the environmental sciences, the way I saw myself doing. So it was a very narrow path from that sense, just consulting, but that was literally my picture. It's like, I want to be an environmental consultant, but I didn't know what the heck that meant, right? Like, it's a very broad term. there's so many different companies out there. There's so many different work streams you can do, right? So that's all I knew. That's just the terminology itself without really truly understanding what it means, right? So, and I think it just took me, doing my master's, and, I was wonderful at it, but it was so academic based where like I did not have any transferable skills, where I was like, okay, I'm great in academia, but I can go get a job with it, right? So that way I had to realign myself and be like, okay, you know what? I want to be in this field. I don't want to leave it. What are the main markets I can find to work in it, right? And when I did my search, it was like mining and oil and gas. And I was like, I'm going to pick mining for no apparent reason. I was just like, let's just try this sector, right? So I think it was just more about, I want to be in the environmental sector and be employed. And it was just a journey that I just went through, right? And I did a PhD in it so I can educate myself and get the right skill sets, to have the knowledge base, so then I can go and get a career, where I want to be, right? So I think it was just that, and it wasn't an easy journey. Like it was like, you doubt yourself, you'd be like, like really like, I'm unemployed after having 2 degrees, like really, is it a good plan, right? But you just have to trust yourself a little bit, and just back yourself, but also like you get lucky, right? Like like you have to find those right mentors for you, that can that believe in you, and they kind of push you to to take you to the next step.
I think that that's very interesting. And I mean, I'm an assistant professor in a university. I definitely believe in academia, but one thing universities aren't very good at is preparing trainees for jobs outside of academia. So I think what you just shared is really, really important, of identifying, well, if I don't want to be here, if I don't want to work in a university for the rest of my life, what other avenues, what other markets could I turn to use these skills? Well, thank you, Varun. That's really, really interesting. And maybe Emmanuel, we could turn back to you. Could you maybe share some insight on the same question? What motivated you to enter your field? Was there any moment that was like this light bulb that showed you were on the right path?
Yeah, no, it's so easy for me to give the impression that I had my life all figured out from high school. I did this course that made me want to go into environmental studies and all, but that wasn't just the case. Like, it was a roller coaster journey. I came from a very, I don't like saying poor background, but we're not very financially stable. And I happened to be the first to go to school among my family, and I was like the last. So it was a series of first for me. So one of the reasons I went to school was also to break the cycle of poverty. And after college, I needed to get a job, and I had to be real with myself, and I just kept going for the best offer. So I initially started working in a bank, which was equivalent to the Bank of Canada, and I was like an IT guy there. But then I was miserable. I was just waiting for my paycheck. Then I just figured, okay, I need to leave here to do something else, something that will pay more. Then I went into oil and gas. I did IT support and recruitment in oil and gas for a bit. I got miserable there also. Then I said, okay, maybe consulting, big 4 firms would be really cool. I got into Deloitte. I was a consultant. I was doing tax, which I knew nothing about, but they said they would train me. But then I just realized I was just another guy on the desk. Everything I was doing was pretty much regimented, and I felt so miserable. And I just realized that something is missing. And that's when I decided to go against everyone, go act like a foolish guy, and just pursue my passion, which was to do something with my hands, to do something I'm happy to wake up to. I have tried going after the money. I did get a way to get the money, but it wasn't satisfying. that desire within. So I got a scholarship to go to South Africa for my master's. So I was at the University of Cape Town, and this was where I had the aha moment. So I did engineering physics for my bachelor's, but when I got to the University of Cape Town, I had an opportunity to get into the engineering program at the electrical engineering. Then I met a wonderful professor. My name is Dr. Jessica Chenya at the ISA, Hydrogen South Africa Institute. And she and my main supervisor introduced me to the world of fuel cells. And I just realized that this is it. Like, this is what I really want to do in my life. Like hydrogen is the answer. Fossil fuels, I was in all of that sector. I know the amount of money that goes into that sector. And I know all the politics that go into it. And I know that we need actually to defossilize the environment. We need to decarbonize. And if we don't have a solution, we can't say stop using oil and gas, stop using petrol in your cars if there is no viable solution. You need to be part of the solution. I can't just say I want to be an advocate without doing something. And I know I'm very good with calculations, and these things come naturally to me. Like, why don't I be a part of the solution? So that's how I delved right into doing hydrogen research. And I was privileged to be able to come to Canada for my PhD. And this is where everything got more exciting. My supervisor here really helped me. I would say my PhD has been very successful. And I would not say that, oh yeah, it's the same story all over, like in terms of academia, you don't get an opportunity to see if you could do something else. Because for me, I got an opportunity to get into like an entrepreneurship program during my PhD. It's called the I2I, Invention to Innovation. And then I had a business idea because I didn't go into academia or doing a PhD because I'm trying to get a job or something. I was just doing it because I want to make like a change. Like, I realized that a job is not the answer for me. I need to make an impact. So every time I go into the lab, I keep questioning, why is this way? Can we do it better? So along the line, by asking those very hard questions, questioning why people say never, I realized that all those never are just people not willing to go the extra mile sometimes. So along the line, I was able to take a bend, and we was able to get a new technology out that was able to do something that takes as much as 24 hours, we're able to do in 45 minutes. So then we commercialized that. That's how H2 Explore came about. And it's a company that is very close to my heart. And interestingly, we won our first pitch yesterday. So I'm still in the very excited mode. So yeah, that's how the journey had gone. So it was not a very straightforward journey to be like, yeah, I knew the importance of trying to make money when you're done with school, feeling like academia couldn't cut it out for you. But one thing that really helped is that when you follow after your passion and not just money, money is going to come along the way.
I think that's a very important point, that as when you're maybe a young graduate and you're trying all these different positions or different jobs where you're not necessarily happy at, it can be quite disheartening. And I mean, your journey, you shared that you tried many things before finally deciding, no, this is what I am meant to be doing. So it's certainly I think it's good advice to sort of keep trying to find the right avenue, and don't be discouraged if you're in a position where you kind of feel like you're in a rut. Thank you, Emmanuel. Maybe the next question I could direct to Christine. So you obviously did a lot of lab work during your training, and your company is intimately related to lab work and the way we produce chemicals. Could you tell us a bit about what your experience working in a lab gave you in terms of skills that helped you in your current position? What did you take away from your lab work as a grad student into CERT?
Definitely. So I had a lot of varied lab experiences during my academic career. So in undergrad, I worked in a biochemistry lab, I worked in an electrophysiology lab, I worked in a histology lab. And then for my PhD, I worked in biomedical, electrochemical, biosensing lab. And then for my postdoc, I switched fields and started working on electrochemical CO2 electroreduction. And I think through all that, there were some common skills that I took away from all of those different labs. So independent research, being able to do literature review, scanning literature quickly to get pulling out the key points and being able to build upon that in order to really innovate. Experimental planning, execution, project planning, using different pieces of equipment in the lab, different analytical techniques, being able to do data analysis and presentation, as well as troubleshooting and resilience in research, because not always things don't always work out, and it's important to know that that's the case, and that you can work through those troubles to, find something that will work out. I think I also took away like a learning culture, meaning like a culture of continuous improvement. I'm never done learning, even though I'm out of school now. I'm always willing to learn as well as teach people what I've learned. And so I think that is something that I wanted to definitely bring into our company and really encourage that knowledge transfer, individual learning and research, but also collaborative learning and research. I also took away the art of storytelling. I think as scientists and engineers, we can really get caught up in like the technical details, but when we want to deploy our technology or communicate our technology outwards, it's important that we are able to explain what we do to those that aren't directly in our fields. And that's how we can really make an impact and deploy our technologies. And then I guess like one final thing is that innovation is really a team activity. So that collaboration is really important. Working on hard problems requires multidisciplinary solutions. And so working with diverse teams who bring unique skill sets is really important for getting to solutions faster than if you were working alone.
So definitely a very broad set of skills that came from your time in your training.
Definitely. And although I'm no longer in the lab as much as I'd like to be, I still interact with researchers every day, and having that experience really helps me manage and guide their research.
You mentioned accepting when things don't quite work out, whether you're working on an experiment or something in the lab. And I think that's something a lot of grad students feel when you're in school pursuing a degree. Designs or experiments that fail can be quite personal.
Yes.
So it's important to be able to pivot to the solution-seeking mindset, right? Which is critical, I expect, in industry.
Definitely. And I think reaching out to those around you when you're in those situations is really important. Bringing extra perspectives can really change your thinking and really get you out of those ruts towards finding a solution.
Excellent. Thank you, Christine. I'd like to turn now to Kiyomi. Kiyomi, you mentioned you have had many different jobs in your career. You've tried many different things, and now it seems that your work at Ocean Networks is quite varied. It seems like you do a lot of different things depending on the community you're partnered with. What excites you about getting up in the morning and going to work?
I mean, who doesn't want to get on a boat and maybe see some whales today? I don't know. I really love working with our partners. I think my mind gets bored pretty easily. So the variability in my work it's very stressful, but it's also very engaging. The fact that I get to be involved in so many projects, and they're not about us, right? It's about helping these communities who they're quite small. Some of the teams that we work with are only maybe 6 people, and they're doing all these different marine programs that we're one small part of that we're trying to help succeed. And it's a very rewarding experience. It's a very exciting experience. Like last week, I helped teach some of our local partners how to find and analyze whale sounds from hydrophone data, which is like an underwater microphone. Last month, I was on the North Coast talking with community members about their programs and doing some maintenance on their own community observatories. We were in a marine mammal workshop, saw those humpbacks, which was amazing. Earlier this year, I was on Arctic sea ice in Iqaluit with a group of Inuit hunters who were collecting CTD casts. We took those CTD casts and we helped them do some analysis on the data that they had collected and found some anomalies within the water column that they were able to explain with their own traditional knowledge. So it was really exciting to see that fusion of traditional knowledge and what we would call traditional science, I guess, and like have those worlds meet and them to appreciate each other, I guess, which was really, really, really cool. So we talked with all of the community members about the work that they've been doing over the last 3 years. It's just, there's a lot of really great stuff that we get to do in the day, and you know, their success, I think, is probably what is the most exciting. It's really rewarding to see them, you know, it's called a CTD, but it's an instrument that collects a bunch of water quality parameters through the water column. And when they bring up the cast, we have an app that helps them sort of see the results right away, and they can be like, oh yeah, this is really cool. Oh, this explains at this time of year why the seals come to this area, or something like that. And that they're able to quantify all these phenomena that they see all the time. So quite a lot of the folks that we work with are Indigenous, and you get really humbled also talking to them about their knowledge and experience, because I guess for me, I may be able to teach them how to deploy an instrument and do something with the data, but I don't have the knowledge or experience that they do about their waters. So like if I were on the boat, I'd probably get myself killed and run us aground or something like that. The most embarrassing moment for me ever was when I was trying to tie a bowline in front of like a group of wizened old fishermen who had been doing this since they were kids. It was just a disaster, but they had a really good sense of humor about it, and they fed me lots of halibut after. So no hard feelings, but it keeps you on your toes. It keeps you interested when you go back to do some data analysis, or when you start working on more projects with them and your relationships develop further. It just makes it, I don't know, you always have something that you're working on, which keeps you engaged every day, which is just really exciting.
And this opportunity to be able to weave different types of knowledge together in your work must be very rewarding. And it sort of goes back to what Christine was saying of where, you know, you might not be in school anymore, but you are definitely still learning new things every day.
Yeah, I definitely had to do a lot of unlearning, I guess, from like traditional academia sort of mentality, and just be like, oh, I don't actually know anything. So it was, yeah, it's very exciting.
Well, it's interesting listening to all four of you. I mean, you all have very different backgrounds and different jobs right now, but I'm like, there is this, you know, main this flow, this thread through all four of your stories. What I'm hearing is, you know, tried many different things before finding what you wanted to do, easily bored, doesn't want to sit at the desk all day, and do not want to be an MD. I think everyone sort of starts, a lot of people start in science thinking, oh, I'll go to medical school. And it's really exciting to hear all of you share about how you diverted from this path. And then maybe for next question, we can stick with you, Kiyomi. And I'd like to know if you experienced any particular challenges or setbacks during your career development, and how you overcame any of these setbacks.
Yeah, I don't think my challenges were particularly unique. First, I didn't grow up in a wealthy family, and I took some time off after high school, so I didn't have a whole lot of scholarship opportunities, but that just meant I had to work during school. So I was a lifeguard all through my academic career. And I had to be really good about time management. You know, working 20 hours a week plus taking a full course load is a lot. And that can definitely be reflected in courses and how you perform, but I did well enough. And it also reflected on how long it took me to do my degree. So it was a long journey, but being where I am now and accomplishing what I have, I feel like this is, I'm very grateful for it. I still feel like I've done really well. One thing you do keep hearing about in this field, I guess, is sexism and ageism in the workplace. I would say that was something that I was not prepared for, I guess. I was really lucky during my undergrad and through my employment, even as a lifeguard, to have a lot of women in leadership positions. And so I think I was very insulated from that, including, like, I was also in a supervisory position. And my prof was also what I would call definitely an ally. You know, there was no real sense of inequality for me. So when I was put into what I would call a grown-up job, it was pretty obvious that there was a difference in treatment in this sector, just because I was a woman, and B, I was young, and at the time the field was very male dominated and kind of like this old boys club sort of feel. So, you know, you walk into work and you're called sweetheart or sunshine and being the butt of jokes because you're too young for some event to have happened. It was discouraging. It was a bit of a shock to the system, I guess, because I came from this, like, why couldn't I do this thing? I obviously have been working very hard and I'm a person, so that shouldn't affect how people see me. And it made it even more difficult because in my role, I was a supervisor for a group of men who were at least 20 years older than me. So that was also pretty challenging. You know, I had more technical experience than them, but they have a lifetime of practical experience, and it was, it weighed on me quite a lot, I would say. So I had to trust them to know that what they were doing and what they were talking about, but it took a lot of patience and listening from me, actually, just to earn their respect as a leader. Not that I thought that I deserved it immediately, but it took a lot more effort, I think, than it would have for someone else. So that was really frustrating. And I had to recognize that sometimes it can be a no-win situation with individuals. So I started trying to understand, you know, when it's best just to not engage outside of a professional capacity, also when to speak up and advocate for myself. And I think eventually we got to a happy medium, but by that point I was like, maybe this isn't the sector for me. So I yeeted out of there, so to speak. Yeah, it's not this amazing story of overcoming and triumphing over my difficult journey, but I think it's about as much as I could have anticipated given the situation.
And I think you make an excellent point that these challenges aren't unique and that many people in STEAM careers experience these. And there's huge value in seeing yourself in the people that are important in your field, of seeing people who act like you and look like you. And I feel like maybe mentors and finding allies to support you throughout this journey is really, really important. People who will understand challenges that you might experience and will uplift you and sort of push down barriers to help you shine.
Yeah, in that particular field, it was hard for everyone in my boat, and it was harder for us to all, I guess, have our voices heard. So I think it's okay to retreat also when you're not in a happy situation. So
Self-preservation is
yeah.
important. Yeah. And maybe speaking of finding mentors and finding allies, maybe I could go to Christine with this question. How does one go about finding a mentor? How do you find that special person who will uplift and help you and help create opportunities for you to learn and grow?
It's a great question. I guess one of my first mentors was my PhD supervisor, Professor Leila Soleimani. To be honest, she found me. My application to the School of Biomedical Engineering, I was actually about to accept a different graduate school offer, but she contacted me the day before, and I was really interested in the research that she was doing. And so I joined her lab as one of her first graduate students. My intention was to join, just do a master's, and then go get a real job in the real world. But you know, her passion for engineering and using it creatively to solve complex problems in disease diagnosis really inspired me to continue on in the research. And so I switched to my PhD program instead. So she both imparted technical knowledge and expertise, but she also nurtured my passion for working on complex problems and really shaped me into the engineer I am today. She always believed in my skills, even though I didn't always believe in myself. I think as a female in engineering, there weren't that many examples of females in leadership positions that I had throughout my undergrad, and kind of seeing her as this young prof really motivating me, and her believing in me really, you know, helped me gain that confidence in myself. She also challenged me to grow in ways that I didn't think were possible. And I think that was really important, because I probably would have stuck in my comfort zone and really not expanded my skills or my knowledge as much if she wasn't there mentoring me. She also introduced me to my next mentor, who was my postdoc supervisor, Professor Dave Sinton. And he saw my background in electrochemistry and really challenged me to start working in the new field of CO2 electroreduction. I ended up really loving it. I never really saw myself as a leader, and he gave me opportunities to lead subgroups within the research group. And then that translated into me being the technical lead for our XPRIZE team, which really helped expand my technical skills, my project management skills, and those leadership skills. which without doing that project, I don't think I would be where I am today. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity, as well as the belief that I could execute on that, despite having only been in academia up to that point, having zero industry experience. And, you know, going through that experience really taught me the importance of mentorship and having those people who are like always on your side, who believe in you. And even if they don't have the answers, they can guide you towards the answers. So yeah, I think they really shaped me into the researcher and entrepreneur I am today, and gave me excellent examples of what it means to be leaders.
And mentors really pave the way for you, and they put the stepping stones in front of you to make sure you can get to where you need to be going. And it seems like your mentors also set you up to become a mentor yourself in your
Definitely.
role, in your current position.
Yes, definitely.
Well, thank you to all four of you for these insightful comments. Before I ask you one last question, I would like to remind everyone in the audience to enter any questions you may have in the Q&A function. There are already a few there, and if there are any other questions, please pop them in there. Now, before we move on to the audience Q&A, one last difficult question. If you were to speak to a younger version of yourself, or if you were to offer any guidance to students who are in university or college right now and who are considering entering the environmental field, could you give one piece of advice that would help them on their journey? You've already shared many, but if you could boil it down to one piece of advice each, and maybe we can start with Emmanuel.
I have quite a few. I don't know which one I'm going to pick as the one go-to. Maybe I would say is believe in yourself. Don't doubt what you can do. That was a big challenge for me, especially being a student of color in a predominantly white university. I doubted myself all the time. I felt like I do not fit in. I'm not worthy to be in science. I go to conference, I'm just the only one there. And I feel like there's no one I look like or speak like me. I feel like people wouldn't even understand what I'm saying. But then let your excellence speak for you. Once you're excellent at what you do, they will come find you. I believe in a book, a phrase said, the gift of man makes room for him. And when you see a man that is diligent in his business, you will sit with kings and not mere men. So just be diligent, keep working at it, and yeah, don't doubt yourself. You deserve it, sit at the table also.
That's excellent advice. Let your excellence speak for you. I think that's very, very powerful. Christine, maybe one piece of advice that you would like to share?
I think be open to opportunities, do a co-op, do an internship during your studies. That's really your time to kind of figure out what you want to do. And it's pretty low stakes to spend 4 months at a different lab or at a different company just to kind of figure out where your interest lies. I know for myself, I was really set on getting my degree in 4 years. So I only worked during the summer, but really, like, what would it have meant to have like graduated 1 year late? I think it's really important to spend time for like a more diverse and enriched outcome. So yeah, try to get as much experience as possible.
Try different things, and 4 months is nothing. It seems
Yeah,
like
exactly.
a lot when you're in school, but it's not that long. Thank you, Christine. Varun, could you boil down, your experience to one excellent piece of advice for anyone listening?
I mean, for environmental sciences, I would say understand market dynamics, where you think economy, where you think the overall society is going to shift, right? And if you want to be more strategic about it, those are the sectors that you want to focus on.
So being strategic to some extent and choosing the sector where you feel you can shine and make an actual difference.
Exactly.
Excellent. Thank you, Varun. And Kiyomi, one final piece of advice?
I would say maybe be curious. So Christine had mentioned this idea of continuous learning and always being a student in the world, and I think that's totally true. Like there's this common phrase you hear in grad school about the more you know, the less you actually do know. think Socrates said it to some better extent as well. But you have to be comfortable, I guess, with what you don't know, and that you should be curious and find out what you can learn about that. So, yeah.
That's excellent advice. I think university training in STEAM often points us to becoming an ultra specialist of something. But there's a lot of value in being a generalist as well, and knowing things in many different fields and in recognizing what we don't know. Well, thank you for these 4 excellent pieces of advice. I would now like to turn it over to the Q&A section. We have a couple of really interesting questions, and this first one I would open up to all 4 of you. So whoever is keen to answer, please chime in. So one of our attendees posted, everyone is doing such interesting work, and I can definitely relate to a little bit of everyone's stories, especially how roundabout it can all be. An open question to all. As a recent grad, the job market is looking very competitive for junior and entry roles, especially without much experience. Do you have any advice for getting that first job and getting that first step into the sector?
Maybe I can give it a try. I think for me, what I did was I knew that I needed to get a job outside. Immediately I finished my college, my university studies. So what I targeted first was internships, and try to look for internships, try to gain experience by volunteering. Those things actually speaks a lot, and you need to learn how to also, maybe for lack of a better word, sell your idea. We've been learned to kind of, in academia, they try to tell you need to tone down things, and sometimes you need to be able to maybe shout a little bit about your achievements and some of the things you do. So those internships, those volunteering opportunities, put them there. It shows your recruiter. I was like working as a recruiter also for some time. So some of the things we get to look at is, are you just idle in these times, or are you engaged? Once you show that you're engaged, it shows that you're willing to work, you're willing to learn. So that's how to make yourself get better. And if nothing is coming on, there are free courses you could do online. Just keep your mind equipped, and that way you are distinguishing yourself from the rest of the crowd. Someone explained extraordinary to me as that little extra than an ordinary person would do. So if an ordinary person will go 10 miles, if you go 10.0001 mile, that makes you extraordinary, that little bit of extra. You could just sit down and say, oh no, I'm not getting the job, or you could begin to launch yourself out there, volunteer, get internship experience, take courses that are free, and also network with people. Networking is very important. LinkedIn is a good resource. Just send messages to people, network with them, ask them to take you under your wings. I used to cast my net upon many waters. So when I'm trying to get networks, I don't just say, I speak to one person, it doesn't respond, and I allow my pride block me from speaking to someone else. I pick like 5, strategically reach out to them. At least one of them will reach out. And if they don't, I keep trying.
That is so important, because it can be very daunting to advocate for ourselves and sort of act as our own personal salesperson. But you're so right. And that is wonderful advice, to sort of use the tools of your field like LinkedIn to cast a net, and don't let your pride get in the way of meeting people and networking with folks who can help you get that next position. Yeah, thank you, Emmanuel. We have another question. Oh.
I just wanted to echo his sentiment about networking. I would say probably the most success I've had with networking, especially when I was a newer grad, was going to poster sessions of conferences, honestly. Like, you walk around, these are people who are probably in a very similar boat to you, who are also new to the job world, I guess, and they're wanting to show their work, and you can show them what you're doing. You can talk to other people who are a little further along, and it's kind of a safer space if you're nervous about anything like that. Just have a conversation and keep in touch. Yeah, that's how I actually got this job, is I talked to someone at a conference and I just kept bothering them every year. So.
Well, that's a good point. There are many different ways to network and to advertise and advocate for yourself. So maybe find the medium that is most comfortable to you, and try to step a little bit outside of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
We have a question from an attendee that says, Christine mentioned storytelling. How else can the arts benefit sciences and the scientific journey? Would anyone like to take this one? Maybe Christine, since you mentioned, you brought up storytelling, I'll direct this to you to start.
Definitely.
You mentioned it was so important, it was an important skill that you learned during your schooling. How does that translate in your day-to-day life at Cert Systems?
Yeah, I mean, I think my academic career, I was mostly presenting to fellow academics. And so maybe it didn't really matter what my graphs looked like on my PowerPoint slides. But now I have to, interact with investors and potential customers. And, the way I'm presenting information really does matter and really helps with the storytelling. So having figures and, other ways to communicate information so that everybody can follow along is really important, because not everybody has the same background. And I think arts is, something that can be used to like provide a common language for everyone to really follow the story properly.
Would anyone else like to echo what Christine shared about storytelling, the importance of finding the right ways to explain what we're doing to the right audiences, which are very different once we're out of school, certainly. Naomi?
Yeah, I will.
Yes.
Yeah, I can add to that a little bit. So like, I mean, as a scientist, like we love numbers, we love data, we love complex figures. Like we get weird energy from it. But yeah, for most people, that's overwhelming. And people who want to make a decision, they want to know, within a few seconds, what are you trying to communicate, right? If like as a consultant, they hired you to give you to give them an advice, right? They are trusting you that you have already done your due diligence. You have looked at the numbers, you have looked at all the complex things behind it, but ultimately, what does that mean, and how is that going to impact them and their decision making, right? So you have to think from their point of view, what are they trying to get out of it, and boil it down to simple things. It's like, this is what you need to do, or this is what like this is the steps you have to take. If they want to know more, they can always come back and be like, how did you come to this conclusion? Then you can take a deeper dive, because they have now interest in what you're telling. But until then, you have to let them come for a journey if they want to, but tell them what's important to them right away.
So I guess having a clear understanding of what you're trying to communicate, what the message is, and what the mission of whatever talk or pitch you're making is. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have another question in the chat. So several among you have mentioned, I decided to do this, or I switched to that. What or who helps you the most to self-reflect and to correct the path that you're on? How do you self-analyze, and how do you reassess your options? That's a big and scary question, I suppose, because these decisions can be very intimidating. So would anyone like to share on how you made these sometimes difficult choices to switch your path during your careers?
I can try give it a stab. So one of the things people used to see when they see my CVs, they see that I've moved around a lot, from engineering physics to electrical engineering to PhD in chemistry and all the kind of jobs I did. The question I always ask myself oftentimes is, I notice that I make decisions to make people happy, but not myself. I always consider myself last. But the truth is that I always have to go to bed with myself. And people would, no matter what you do, although there are sometimes that people that are very important to us and we just want to do things for them. But sometimes also you need to do things for you, because after a while, those people won't be there and you still have to live with yourself. So whatever decision you're making, ask yourself, can I live with this in the next 10, 20, 30 years? If I look at this moment, will I say I did this for me or I did this for someone else? And yeah, maybe I've learned to do things for myself. And in that moment of self-reflection, it does help me to realize that, okay, Emmanuel, you have to live with yourself. You have to be the one to do all the work. Is it something you're happy doing? You might make money for other people, but are you happy? That's how people get depressed and people hate their jobs. And yeah, just do what makes you happy. Ask yourself, am I doing this for me? Am I doing this for someone else?
That's so important, centering back on what you actually want, and you are the person that lives with you, and you need to be comfortable in the decisions that you make. I think that's wonderful advice. And I know when I was more junior, when I was younger, I was very scared that my decisions would set me down a path that was forever. And I thought I could never change my mind and that everything was predetermined. So trusting yourself and to find the things that will make you happy is very good advice, and feeling free to change your mind afterwards. We have another question here for Christine, but I think everyone can relate to this. How do you juggle all of your responsibilities? It seems very challenging. Did you, Christine, or did anyone else here have any management training before stepping into your current roles? Because to some degree, you all have many, many different hats that you wear in your careers.
And maybe go first on that. So I didn't have any formal management training. So what I did have was the experience that I gained through my academic experience in my PhD, being one of the first graduate students, kind of automatically getting that leadership role in the lab, and then moving on to my postdoc, having a leadership role there. So it was kind of on the job training. But I think what really helped when I moved into like the startup was we started working with different accelerator programs, and through those accelerator programs, they often offer you mentors. And I think really learning from mentors who have been entrepreneurs themselves, who have led teams, you know, asking them management questions and kind of posing that to them. I also recently in the past year have been working with like a leadership coach, so that's been really helpful, you know, for really looking at what my strengths are as a leader and how I can put those out towards my team and really guide my team. Those are some of the tools that I've used. In terms of how I manage juggling a lot of things, I would say not very well. I think it's impossible to have a perfect work-life balance. I think staying organized is a key thing. So I'm like looking at my calendar all of the time. I'm prioritizing my tasks. I'm writing to-do lists. I'm checking them off. And I think that's the only way that I'm productive. And I think also recently, as our team has grown, you know, looking at who on our team can step up into leadership positions so that I can delegate stuff to them. I can empower them to become leaders, and, you know, they can take on some of the tasks that I have been taking on so far.
So working together basically as a team, sharing the load,
Yes.
and accepting that we can't be perfect at everything.
Yes.
I saw a couple of the heads, Bob, when you mentioned, Christine, that you weren't very good at juggling. Does anyone else want to chime in on this? Maybe Varun or Guillaume Emmanuel?
I can definitely relate to that. I think my supervisors would probably be like, yeah, they would also agree, just because it is hard to juggle so many responsibilities at once. For management training, I know I've had mentors try and help us out. You know, they have different things like, what is it, a RACI matrix or something like that. They'll give you all these tools to help you, but it does come down a lot of the time to personal management, I guess. The question about having management training before stepping into the role, I've actually had more training offered to me while in a role. So once you're in a role, someone is going to say, okay, we're offering this course on how to do leadership or something like that. And then that'll sort of help you grow into the role. And another one that I would do was also just throughout my academic career and then also my employment, you just find people that you gravitate to who are leaders that you would want or enjoy working for, and it's easy to model yourself after them or try and understand where they're coming from and why they operate the way they do. I think that's really valuable, just to follow their lead, I guess, and try and be better as you move through your career.
Yeah, if formal training isn't available, finding positive outcomes. Varun,
Yeah.
would you like to chime in?
Yeah, I will add that, like, I mean, I'm not the best multitasker, right? So the way I go about different things to do is, you know, I kind of break my day down by like morning, afternoon, late evening session, whatever, right? And I will pick one task in that time and try to complete it, right? Then have a switch over, like mental switch over, and then work on a whole different type of task later on in the day, right? So even though then as a day you are multitasking, but at any given time you're only focused on one thing and one task, right? So my brain does better that way. I can't do, like, 5 different type of things at one time. I will fail miserably at it, right? So you want to just break it down to manageable sections, so to speak, right? And tackle it as it comes. So that's my that's my one advice there.
Break things down into more manageable bits. Well, with that, I would like to thank everyone in the audience for the excellent questions. And I'm so sorry that we'll have to stop now. So we haven't been able to get to all the questions, but thank you for contributing to the Q&A. Thank you so much, Emmanuel, Christine, Varun, and Kiyomi, for taking time out of your very busy schedules to speak with us and to share about your journeys and your exciting careers. Thanks to the audience members for joining us today and for contributing to the Q&A and to the chat. For people in the audience, we hope that you'll join us for the next CFI webinar, which will be on November 28th. That will feature 4 other great panelists that also have environmental careers. And please visit innovation.ca to register to this next webinar on November 28th. Also note that folks in the audience, you will be receiving a survey in the next few days about this webinar. If you can, please take some time to answer it. These surveys are very important and help the CFI improve the webinars that they offer. And you'll also receive another entry to win an iPad. So if you can, please take some time and respond to the survey. We would also appreciate it if you can share info about this webinar or spread the word to friends and fellow students. And we will see you all next time on November 28th. Thank you again to our panelists. Thank you to our audience for attending, and I hope everyone has a great day.